Welcome, everyone.
Sorry about that. Carry on.
My name is David Casenove. I'm French and I'm teaching English language at Chiba University in Japan. Welcome to this presentation focusing on science teaching models. In this presentation, I would like to examine possible transformative effects of an exchange program using online technologies on undergraduate nursing students in Japan and in the United States. Right. More than for other professions, healthcare providers require both advanced scientific knowledge as well as fairly developed interpersonal skills. For nursing students, an important component of their training here in Japan involves the development of behaviors allowing the collection of clinically relevant information, the effective liaison between the patient and other health providers, as well as the competent interaction with social, culturally diverse patients. This last point is of particular importance considering the general internationalization process in the health industry and the general increase in foreign nurses in Japan. But also it's important to consider these aspects in relation to the increasingly diverse foreign population in Japan. In response to this growing need for culturally capable nurses here in Japan, nursing education has for long focused on intercultural competence, where nurses acquire knowledge regarding diverse cultures over a time-limited process. Several observations of these intercultural competence programs revealed that contents were sometimes a bit stereotypical and could lead to outcomes that were opposite to those that were sought after. Another foundation for nursing education is cultural humility, where learning is then seen as a lifelong-term process that examines diversity and power imbalances. Characteristics of cultural humility in nursing include openness, self-awareness, self-reflection, critique, and the fostering of egoless supportive interactions. This process of developing cultural humility in nurses can lead to several consequences on the way nurses actually conduct their activity and their practical duties. Consequences of cultural humility include empowerment, mutual benefit, so between the nurse and the different shareholders in the care provision process, establishment of strong partnerships based on respect, both between nurses and patients and between nurses and other professionals, as well as the pursuit of optimal care. Traditionally, the development of those characteristics at the university fell under the purview of cultural exchange programs. In these cultural exchange programs, students were required to travel and meet people from different cultures and societal backgrounds. However, the financial burden associated to such an exchange often limited the opportunities available to nursing students. As a result, since 2018, Chiba University School of Nursing started a collaborative online international learning program that has been proposed as an effective alternative to develop cultural humility in students. So this collaborative online learning program is shortened in COIL from that point on. Oops, sorry. At our School of Nursing, our COIL program is offered yearly in two variations. One is fully online with the University of Cincinnati, while the other combines both an online component and an in-person travel exchange program with the University of Alabama. Therefore, we call this program with Alabama a hybrid COIL. Both versions of COIL involve 4 online modules hosted on learning management systems, LMS, like Blackboard Learn or Google Classroom. The details of these 4 modules is available on the slide that you're seeing now in the yellow box. Depending on how the students want to interact with each other, our COIL programs are providing them with a diverse array of online tools. Whether students are interacting at the same time or at different times, whether they want to interact directly face-to-face or indirectly, students can establish contact through Zoom, Google Chat, Flip, or video essays that are hosted on the LMS. Since our programs have just started and they're fairly new, there was a need to assess the validity of these new online programs, particularly with respect to the existing travel exchange programs that existed prior. So if we wanted to focus on cultural humility as learning goals, we decided to focus this study on how COIL affected the attitudes and beliefs of nursing students about communication for academic purposes. For this study, we recruited Japanese and American students engaged in COIL between November 2021 and March 2022. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, both COILs with Alabama and Cincinnati were conducted fully online, with no complementary travel component for the program with Alabama. Of the 20 students enrolled in the program, 8 Japanese students and 5 American students provided consent for participating in this program assessment. So as it is now, it's very much a pilot study. Data collection was conducted using 2 distinct methodologies. We produced a survey questionnaire for Japanese students in Japanese, and we implemented semi-structured focus group discussions with the American students. The anonymous questionnaire survey was composed of 4 survey sections with additional demographic information collected at the start of the questionnaire. It asks students to reflect on their self-perception, their motivation towards using English to communicate, their communication strategies, and a self-assessment of their attitudes and beliefs about academic communication in English as a lingua franca. All question items were modified after Fantini 2006, which was a questionnaire focused on intercultural competence, but we modified the questions to assess students' transformational experiences through 4 psychometric scales extracted from the Belief, Events, and Values Inventory, or BEVI, that we judged related to intercultural humility. The first scale was self-satisfaction, which measures the tendency to have a strong sense of will, low tolerance for mistake, and generally positive thinking. Self-awareness was the scale that measured the tendency towards introspection, awareness of the complexity of self, consideration of human experiences, and tolerance for uncomfortable thoughts. Social-emotional convergence measured the tendency to perceive the world in shades of gray in a non-Manichaean way. And finally, social-cultural openness measured the tendency to hold progressive points of views regarding a broad array of social and cultural issues. On this slide, you can see some examples of the questions we included in the survey for the 4 psychometric dimensions. We sampled these questions from the first 3 sections of the survey related to either their perceived personality traits, their motivation to engage, their communication strategies. The questions actually consisted of statements as you can see here in the question samples. So these statements were proposed to the students, and they were requested to disagree or agree with them using a 6-point Likert scale. The statements were designed to be as neutral as possible, so that the agreement with the statement would not be biased by pre-assumptions on what a good answer would be. High scores on any of the 4 scales were not inherently good or bad. In the case of self-certitude, a high score could be associated with both a strong personal compass and a lack of flexibility when facing different ways of doing things. In the case of the American students, an online focus group discussion was conducted among volunteers. The discussion followed a semi-structured format based on 2 distinct questions that you now see on the slide. So once we collected all that data from interviews and questionnaire data, we decided to conduct various tests and explorations of that data. Our data analysis for the survey was conducted using the software JASP. In section 1, the section focusing on self-perception of personality traits, student responses focused on their self-perception during conversation in front of either a Japanese audience or in front of an American audience. We calculated 95% confidence intervals to examine the difference between response scores in either situations. In section 2, focusing on motivation, responses that scored above 4 were considered as agreement, and responses that scored below 2 were considered as disagreement. In section 3, we compared academic communication skills in the Japanese language and the English language. Like in section 1, we used 95% confidence intervals to examine differences between the different types of conditions. In section 4, we used paired t-tests to compare pre and post scores for each question items. In the case of the American student interviews, we conducted a narrative thematic analysis in order to extract from the interview transcripts interesting categories and themes for the responses. Our interview process led to interesting insights into the American student psyche. Overall, American students expressed their enthusiasm for the opportunity to engage in intercultural exchange during the pandemic. Most participants mentioned a group discussion about healthcare systems, in which they learned both about the Japanese healthcare system and the American one. This observation illustrates the importance of curating the content of online activities to ensure that they are both informative, relevant to participants, and dependent on the collaboration between the different sides of the collaboration. Perceived limiting factors for COIL included the timing of the program and its duration. For the Japanese students, most of the difficulty lied mostly in the quantity of reading materials that were authentic nursing research materials on a specific topic, such as COVID vaccine hesitancy. When reflecting on their communication styles and strategies, as well as the similitudes that exist between the Japanese strategies and the American English language strategies, students felt that American students could more clearly state their true opinions head-on. While they felt that in a Japanese context, the main idea of a point appears more often at the start of an argument, they also felt that eye contact was more flexible and hedged claims were more common. This could be the result of language proficiency, in the sense that it is more difficult and cognitively complex for Japanese students to express themselves in English, and therefore they spend more effort in controlling their vocabulary and sentence delivery rather than making sure that they have eye contact or that they used proper hedging. At the same time, Japanese students also agreed with a statement that they tend to mingle less with people of other cultures than their American counterparts. Most pre-post comparisons were statistically significant. As you can see on this table, all the numbers written in orange reveal questions that were not seen as significant with the t-test. Generally, COIL led to a perceived reduction of self-certitude, which is usually correlated to higher levels of consideration for others and respect for others. This is supported by increases in social cultural openness, as well as self-awareness, meaning that the students have gained in flexibility, self-critique, and capacity to make bias explicit. For all the changes highlighted previously, we believe that COIL provided a transformative experience that contributed to higher levels of cultural humility. We believe that due to the low number of participants, further study is needed to compare reliably COIL to other exchange modes such as in-person travel, and to validate these findings to eventually integrate COIL as an important educational framework in nursing education. I thank you very much for your attention. References that I cited in the presentation are written here. I'm looking forward to your questions, either now during the session or later on by chat or contact. Thank you very much.